there's only about 2,500 active satellites. So there's about 100 times more debris up there than active satellites. And it's critical that we don't make any more debris because that debris stays in orbit for decades. So basically, as we build out space, we're also building out a legacy for our kids. And so we need to make sure it's a good one that they can continue to use space like we do.
Congratulations to CNN for winning 8 News and Documentary Emmy Awards.
Historic moment in this election.
So this is the room that Alexei Navalny was staying in.
I know you are angry, and I know you are hurting, and I know it's not enough.
How the world views Donald Trump and America. ¿Qué sabías tú de los cero?
Was it your team that poisoned Navalny?
All right, good Friday morning. This is Early Start. I'm Christine Romans.
I'm
Laura Garrett. It's 31 minutes past the hour here in New York. So we know that COVID vaccine mandates are working. The evidence is there. Get this. The number of unvaccinated people in this country has dropped from 95 million people to now just 67 million people. There's still a lot to go, but it's progress. President Biden is making his case for why mandates are needed and pushing more companies to make their workers get the shot. CNN's Jasmine Wright joins us live now. Jasmine, good morning. You know, the president has been clear he didn't want to use these mandates as the first line of defense. He called it tough medicine, right? But at this point, he seems out of options.
Yeah, look, the president yesterday, he turned his focus back to the pandemic after what had seemed like weeks of focus on Congress and his economic agenda. And yesterday in the Chicagoland area, he really said that he was trying to do everything in his power to get more Americans vaccinated. And that trying to do are these mandates. And he said that, as you said, Laura, he was kind of hesitant to do it at first, but here we are. Now, his remarks really came after the White House released a report really touting the success of the mandates as they have led to more Americans getting vaccinated. And it comes after weeks of the same messaging from the White House, really pushing back on any Republican criticism that these things weren't needed or they weren't working. And now remember, President Biden really announced that September rule that federal workers, healthcare staff, and large employees would have to get vaccinated or test negative weekly to continue working. And he said yesterday that the Labor Department would actually issue that rule shortly. But bottom line, Laura, is that this administration recognizes that not only are they going to be judged by the American people on basically really if they're getting these economic agenda items passed, but also on their managing of the pandemic. So yesterday's remarks and this continued messaging that vaccine mandates work are really just multitasking from the White House, trying to make sure that everything is good as they continue to work on their economic agenda.
And, you know, I've talked to business leaders this week who've said that, you know, the president's mandates has spurred them to move faster with their own mandates. Sort of gives them cover, you know. They're given a day off, maybe, you know, some financial incentives, but they're saying you got to do this or you're going to lose your job. The president also says he's taking action against another kind of epidemic that we're dealing with now, unruly passengers on planes. What's the plan there, Jasmine?
Well, the president said yesterday that he had asked his Justice Department to address that rise in violence that we see on planes. I think we've all, as you can see on the screen right now, have seen kind of viral videos of people acting violent after really rebuking that mask mandate online. President Biden said that his DOJ will now take a look at it. And he said it yesterday in the direction of United Airlines CEO, really saying that they will get it done as the White House has kind of worked closely with the airline industry, trying to get them to really impose more mandates on their personnel. And we have seen the rise in vaccines going up in the airline industry. So as you said, this is another part of the president trying to provide cover to businesses to make it more favorable to them to impose really these mandates, trying to get more Americans vaccinated.
I was just shaking my head looking at that video of these crazy people. Oh, thank you. I got hats off to all of those flight attendants and the people who work for the airlines who do
Couldn't be me.
the crisis management that they're dealing with and the way they can
de-escalate situations? I know that the United CEO has said
You
that
hear people
they've done a
clapping
good
to get
job.
off the plane.
I know. All right, Jasmine, nice to see you.
Thank you, Jasmine.
All right, the debt ceiling drama on hold for now, but Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen said we can't keep playing with the nation's full faith and credit this way.
But we do need to settle it longer term. You know, what we're really talking about here is can you count on the government to pay its bills? It's not about future spending or taxes. We've incurred bills. Can the government be counted on to pay those bills? And Americans, whether it's people waiting for a Social Security check or military pay or bondholders who regard U.S. Treasuries as the safest asset in the world, they need to never question that the United States will pay its bills.
There is no question a default would be catastrophic.
It would be enormously damaging to the economy, to financial markets. I've said and continue to think it would be utterly catastrophic. It should be unthinkable.
You know, Yellen also said it's becoming, quote, increasingly damaging to even set a debt ceiling.
It's led to a series of politically dangerous conflicts that have caused Americans and global markets to question whether or not America is serious about paying its bills. It's flirting with a self-inflicted crisis. And it really involves the government giving to their Treasury Secretary and their president conflicting sets of instructions.
In the past 50 years, Congress has acted 78 times to raise the debt limit, 49 times under Republican presidents, 29 times under Democrats. Let's bring in CNN political analyst and managing editor of Axios, Margaret Talib. Margaret, disaster averted on the debt ceiling, only temporarily though. Why can't we just get rid of this thing?
You know, Democrats for a second there looked close. Christine, that whole debt ceiling filibuster conversation that almost happened actually seemed like a decent solution to this. But then they blinked, and I know we said Mitch McConnell blinked, but guess what? Everybody blinked. And it makes sense, maybe theoretically, to have votes on a debt ceiling if that were a way to restrain spending, if people in both parties were like, oh, well, we're going to have to take a vote on it to raise it, so we better not spend more than we have. But that ship, has totally sailed. And the need to raise the debt limit now is the doing of both parties. President Trump and the Republicans' tax cut back from 2017 cost about the same amount of money as we're looking at now in a modified reconciliation bill, the kind of Build Back Better light, that we're talking about now. So this is how we got here. And, the only way to change it is either by bipartisan action. I think we can all agree that's not going to happen. Or Democrats at this point, because they're technically in charge, finding some maneuver. But instead, this compromise that was reached is it's really not a great deal for the Democrats. All it does is force them to all go on the record without any Republican votes with a dollar amount attached to it, which is, guess what, exactly where Republicans wanted Democrats to be. Now they're going to have to do it twice because they're going to have to do it again in this.
But it's for spending that already happened.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a dollar amount attached to it because we have to pay our bills.
And the Democrats would argue, too, that the $2 trillion hole that the Trump tax cuts caused is different than their investment in the American workforce. I mean, they would make that argument.
But Margaret, I think this deal once again also exposed, that's on the Democratic side. I think this also exposed something of a rift among Republicans. You saw some of them clearly angry at Mitch McConnell yesterday. People like Ted Cruz, people like Lindsey Graham. They're mad at McConnell for making a deal with the Democrats. They wanted him to sort of, stay transient on that. The former president and his allies are, of course, attacking this decision. They're happy to come after McConnell anytime, but he did get it done. So I wonder, in your view, does this show that McConnell still has some juice with his caucus, or does it suggest he's actually losing his grip on power?
I think Mitch McConnell is still the chief strategist, the actual chief strategist of the Republican Party. And you're right, Ted Cruz and Lindsey Graham came out really criticizing that decision. There are a lot of other Republicans who are saying they're angry about it. All I'm saying is I don't really understand Why, other than as a messaging proposition? Because I think when you actually look at the impact of it, it gives Republicans pretty much everything they wanted. Those Republicans who you saw cast the procedural vote to allow that vote to happen, look at who they are. They're all leadership, moderates, or people who are retiring. So they have less of an incentive message to the base. And by the way, in the actual vote, 50 to 48, guess how many Republicans were on the record supporting raising the debt limit?
Zero.
Margaret, fighting, the word of the year on Capitol Hill. I think we can put it in the books here. It is only October. On the Democratic side, you've got Senators Joe Manchin and Bernie Sanders. Biden, the president said if those two were in the same room together to work out the differences on that $3.5 trillion bill, he said it would be like a homicide. How do they put their differences aside to get something passed?
That's fairly epic. I mean, the truth at this moment is they don't, which is why we're in a position where Congress is treading water and the Democrats have to come back in December. Look, they represent really different states. What their states have in common is that their states have a lot of poor residents, and their states have pretty clear political ideologies. The problem is that those ideologies are really different, really different places. And I think when you see the video, as you've been showing this morning, of Joe Manchin with his face in his hands when Chuck Schumer is talking, it gives you a glimpse, a sense of his posture. We also saw Bernie Sanders, we had the story earlier this week, do this really, a controversial, I guess, inside the party maneuver where there was an effort among Democratic leaders to support Kyrsten Sinema on this one particular issue, which is the idea that it's really uncool for people to turn on video cameras and follow people in the bathrooms, right? And Sanders' team saying, we'll sign on as long as you add in there that we really wish that she would do X, Y, Z on prescription drug reform and spend more on the reconciliation. These are entrenched positions, and they're real, and they're going to be something Democrats have to work through in the weeks to come.
Margaret Taleb, nice to see you this Friday morning. Have a great weekend. We're going to talk to you again today. Thank you. A programming note, the new CNN original series Diana introduces viewers to the person behind the princess. It reveals a life more complicated and fascinating than the world knew. And it's Sunday. This Sunday premieres at 9 p.m. on CNN.
I expect you to let them breathe. Saya harap kamu bisa menjaga laut untuk generasi penerus. Dami, kukurjutan, awak tinandung dia. Espero que salves nuestro planeta. We listen to those carrying the biggest responsibility for humanity. We are all expecting Generation 1. The first generation that will live carbon neutral by our efforts against climate change.
Immerse yourself in the culture of Azerbaijan.
No matter where you are in the world, there is a clear pattern on how governments and leaders use the power in their hands. Will this change Europe? Demonstrations have erupted over unemployment. There could be some very serious national security questions. Living and working in the US right now gives me an important perspective as an outsider looking in. I'm Robert Kono in Atlanta, and this is CNN.
We share this place, we all belong. We have to restore this planet's soul. Give it water, give it sun, room to grow. I can see a better tomorrow. I can see a better tomorrow.
Dubai is ready to push the boundaries and showcase the world's latest innovations.
It's an extraordinary playground to invent, experiment.
But Expo 2020 aims to go far beyond dazzling its visitors.
It's a place where the sustainability is beyond imagination.
How will it drive critical change and meet tomorrow's challenges? The Road to Expo, Saturday on CNN.
I'm Becky Anderson, 200 meters above the city of Dubai. This is CNN.
Breaking news out of Norway. Moments ago, the Nobel Peace Prize is awarded to journalists standing up for press freedom. Let's bring in Nina DeSantos. Nina, good morning. Tell us about these winners.
Good morning to you, Laura. Well, it is an exciting day for journalism because the two recipients of the Nobel Peace Prize, one of the most prestigious accolades anywhere in the world, has gone to two champion journalists operating in some of the most onerous conditions and most difficult places to be a journalist anywhere in the world. The first recipient is 58-year-old Filipina U.S. journalist Maria Ressa, who founded a site called Rappler to shed light on some of the most sinister aspects of President Rodrigo Duterte of the Philippines regime. Those include allegations of large-scale murder, torture, and also harassment. Ressa was named Time Person of the Year back in 2018, but since her life has been blighted by various allegedly politically motivated cases against her, including libel cases and tax cases as well. And then the second recipient is Dmitry Muratov. He, since the 1990s, has been the editor-in-chief of a newspaper called the Novaya Gazeta in Russia. This is one of the last great independent newspapers in Russia. They've lost 6 journalists at least to what are deemed to be politically targeted killings, and they've faced large-scale harassment throughout the course of their work, not just during Vladimir Putin's time, but also before. He has been awarded the accolade alongside Maria Ressa, the board said, as a mark to champion freedom of information and its crucial role to safeguarding democracy and to protect the world against wars and conflict. This was one of the largest pools ever. They chose from 329 candidates, Laura.
Wow, huge honor, I'm sure. Nina, thank you so much. Appreciate it.
All right, the Tampa Bay Rays open up the division series with a win over the Red Sox thanks to a historic night from one of their stars. Andy Scholes has this morning's Bleacher Report. Hey, Andy.
Yeah, good morning, Christine. 2 years into his postseason career, and Randy Arozarena is already making the case to be one of the best postseason players of all time. He hit 10 home runs in the playoffs last year, picked up right where he left off last night in the 5th inning against Boston. Arozarena comes to the plate, just tees off on this one. He knew it was gone as soon as it left his bat. That gave Tampa a 4-0 lead. Then in the 7th, Arozarena was on third base. And as soon as pitcher Josh Taylor turns around from him here, Arozarena breaks for home, slides in ahead of the tag. Arozarena, the first player to ever steal home and hit a homer in the same postseason game. Tampa takes game 1 of that series 5-0. Astros and White Sox game 1 also had a great slide into home. Jose Altuve trying to beat the throw on the ground to the third. He goes around catcher Yasmani Grandal and just gets a hand on the plate. That made it 2-0 Stros, and that was all Houston ace Lance McCullers would need. He went 6 2/3 innings, giving up no runs. Houston takes game 1 6-1. Game 2 of that series begins a huge quadruple header of playoff action today. Our sister network TBS has both National League Series openers. The Brewers hosting the Braves, and the Giants and Dodgers meet for the first time ever in the postseason. All right, to the NFL. Seahawks hosting the Rams last night. Third quarter, Russell Wilson gets hit in the hand by Aaron Donald. Came back in for one series, but sent the rest of the game with what Coach Pete Carroll said was a badly sprained finger. Matthew Stafford, meanwhile, throwing for 365 yards in this touchdown here to Tyler Higbee. Rams would win this one 26-17. They're now 4-1 on the season. Seahawks falling to 2-3. You know, before every home game, Seattle's live mascot Tame of the Hawk leads the team out, but took a detour on the way back last night, landing on this fan's head. That fan handled that remarkably well. Laura, how would you handle it if a hawk landed on your head?
Try not to freak out. Those talons are like digging into his head. He stayed pretty calm.
Man, I would have freaked out probably.
Oh my goodness. Well, glad he's okay. Andy, have a good weekend. Thank you for bringing us that horrifying scene. All right, and now to this horrifying scene in Hong Kong. Take a look at this. Tons of twisted metal after the scaffolding of an apartment building collapsed onto a busy road. My goodness, at least one construction worker died, according to media reports there. 6 others were rescued. Officials say the wreckage also pinned 2 cars on the street. And you can hear the rescue crews getting pelted by rain on top of everything else. Hong Kong has been under a cyclone warning with heavy rain and strong wind. The weather, it seems, could have been a factor in this collapse.
All right, let's get a check on CNN Business this morning. You look at markets around the world here, you can see a positive performance for the Asian markets that are open, and Europe has opened narrowly mixed here. On Wall Street, stock index futures barely moving lower here. You know, the debt ceiling crisis was averted. The Dow finished up 337 points. The S&P 500, the Nasdaq also ended the day higher. And there's critical data out today in just a couple of hours, that September jobs report. The hope is vaccinations and rising wages helped job growth in September. Economists predict about 500,000 jobs were added back to the economy, and the jobless rate is expected to slip to 5.1%. But that Delta variant is still a concern here. That and a super tight jobs market are actually shaking American CEO confidence. An index of CEO confidence slid nearly 20% in the third quarter, slipping from a record in the second quarter. Hopes in the second quarter had been really high that the country had turned a corner on this pandemic. The struggle to find workers is real. 74% of CEOs said they had trouble finding quality workers during the quarter. And business leaders also recognize they have to pay more to attract and retain talent. 66% of CEOs said they expect to increase wages by at least 3% over the next year. Tesla's HQ is moving to the Lone Star State. As CEO Elon Musk announced headquarters in Austin, Texas. Tesla is currently based in Palo Alto, California. Musk told shareholders, quote, "There's a limit to how big you can scale in the Bay Area." Musk also said despite the move to Texas for the headquarters, Tesla still plans to significantly expand in California. Last year, Musk said he would move Tesla's headquarters to either Texas or Nevada. Remember, after that dispute with California officials over the safety of Tesla's factory during the pandemic. Get vaccinated or lose your job. American Airlines, the latest airline to roll out a vaccine mandate for all of its employees. Employees have until November 24th to get the shot. American said it is considered a government contractor under President Biden's vaccine mandate. The airline will give an extra day of vacation pay to employees who prove they are vaccinated by the deadline.
So, Cats the movie, I think it's fair to say, was objectively weird, not to mention a box office flop, but the film's worst critic, maybe the man behind the legendary Broadway musical. Andrew Lloyd Webber says he hated the movie so much he needed to get a therapy dog because of it. Webber says the two have become close, especially during the pandemic, so maybe something good did come from Cats after all. We're dog people.
Why? Yeah. But why was it so bad?
No, it's just weird.
Why was it so bad? CGI. Okay, our producer Joanna's saying the CGI made it really bad. All right, thanks for joining us. I'm Christine Romans. I'm a dog person.
I'm Laura Jarrett. I am also a dog person. A few days next.
This is CNN. More people get their news from CNN than any other news source.
What's exciting about taking houses that were built anywhere from the 1800s to the 1920s and doing a passive house is you're really breathing new life into these homes. You've got these beautiful old homes, and they really perform horribly. A passive house is just a... Or box. It's no different from a thermos. You have sealed walls, which don't let the air infiltration through, that don't let dust, pollen, bugs, mice, and a lot of other things through. Passive houses also include a fresh air system, which provides filtered fresh air 24/7. It's a pretty wild approach to think that you could actually save the environment while having a better home. It just changes the game.
बात करनी पड़ेगी एक बार हो जाएगा हाँ शादी के बाद वहीं कराएंगे शादी 6 साल में अगले साल अप्रैल में हाँ इसका तो नहीं पुलिस लाइन में पुलिस की बाकी है उसका पुलिस नहीं हुआ बटवाले की क्या प्रॉब्लम है मैंने कौन कुछ साल ही गंदा मेरा पावर एक्सपायर हो गया है इस साल में पावर एक्सपायर हो गया ज़्यादा तो है वहाँ नहीं हो आप मेरे काम पड़ेगा तेरे पास मैं तो पढ़ लूँ इतना नहीं हो सकता मैं पढ़ इधर सकती नहीं ये प्रॉपर कहाँ पड़ेगा मेरा मेरा खिड़की ब्लॉक में पढ़ी ना खिड़की होगा खिड़की नहीं होगा ब्लॉक ऑफिस होगा ब्लॉक में बाबू की पोस्ट में बाकी पौड़ी नहीं होगी पौड़ी में तो 3 ऑफिस हैं
This is the 100 Club, our look at companies that are 100 years old or older. The Scottish Highlands, known for scenic rolling hills and single malt Scotch whiskey. One of the best known is the Macallan, founded in 1824 by barley farmer and school teacher Alexander Reid. The company attributes much of its success to its focus on wood, using high-quality sherry-seasoned oak casks. But for its first 150 years, the Macallan was barely known outside Scotland. In 1980, that all changed when the company started marketing the brand. The first ads began appearing in the UK alongside the crossword in the Times. The Macallan is now available in nearly 100 countries, and in 2018 opened a new distillery, inspired by its deep roots in the Scottish hills and dedicated to promoting sustainability into the next 100 years.
For World Sport, I'm Alex Thomas. This is CNN.
Good morning, I'm Brianna Keeler alongside John Berman on this new day. Economic disaster averted, or now at least, bipartisan senators striking a deal and raising the debt ceiling. So what has Senator Joe Manchin shaking his head The Republican Party rewriting history as former President Trump tries to run out the clock on the insurrection investigation. Will the Trump administration ever be held accountable?
New developments in the manhunt for Brian Laundrie. It turns out he was being surveilled by police before he disappeared. So how did he get away? Plus, is this finally the turning point in the coronavirus pandemic in the U.S.? New signs of progress in the pandemic battle.
Good morning to viewers here in the United States and around the world. It is Friday, October 8th, and if there is one picture to sum up the state of Congress, it is this one. Democrat Joe Manchin, head in hands, listening incredulously or maybe despairingly to Democratic leader Chuck Schumer. It's a scene out of Washington's latest flirtation with economic calamity that let's just call Mr. McConnell, or How I Learned to Stop Worrying and Embrace the Debt Ceiling. Some of Senate Minority Leader McConnell's own Republicans accusing him of caving to Congress as he delivered the necessary GOP votes to raise the country's borrowing limit. So, did he cave? Well, in so much as he decided to avert total economic disaster, the downgrading of America's credit rating, and the global ripple effects that have left us all in a recession, maybe worse, at least until December anyway, then yes, he caved. He did what needed to be done. He got 11 Republicans to join Democrats. So was he met with thanks from his Democratic counterpart? Not even close.
Leader McConnell and Senate Republicans insisted they wanted a solution to the debt ceiling, but said Democrats must raise it alone by going through a drawn-out, convoluted, and risky reconciliation process. That was simply unacceptable to my caucus. And yesterday, Senate Republicans finally realized that their obstruction was not going to work.
So, in case you missed it, that is Joe Manchin behind Leader Schumer shaking his head. He agreed with a number of Republicans who thought Chuck Schumer's speech was mean.
Why was it not appropriate?
I just think that basically what we got to do is find a pathway to make sure that we de-weaponize. We have to de-weaponize. You can't be playing politics. None of us can, on both sides.
So, on the one hand, no complete economic calamity for a few days or months, hopefully. On the other hand, some hurt feelings. Bottom line, they got it done temporarily. This either shows that getting stuff done is possible temporarily, or that even doing the easy things can't be done without rancor, performative or otherwise.
Let's get the very latest on this from CNN Capitol Hill reporter Melanie Zanona. You know, I mean, Chuck Schumer does have an approach here, which is basically, hey, Republicans, why was this even a thing anyway? But this is... You know, why did we even see this?
If this is the absolute bare minimum, we should point out Republicans didn't even vote for the debt ceiling hike. They just allowed Democrats to proceed to this vote, and it's only a short-term deal, so we're still going to deal with this in December. But look, Mitch McConnell's initial reasoning for refusing to cooperate with Democrats was because he wanted to showcase divisions in the Democratic ranks. But what we saw yesterday was dissension in the GOP ranks. I mean, the anger amongst Republicans yesterday was palpable. Ted Cruz said it was a serious mistake and that Republicans blinked. Lindsey Graham said this is a complete capitulation. And then, of course, former President Donald Trump launched a new round of attacks on McConnell over all of this. And so I don't think it bodes well for the next few months when you have Chuck Schumer trying to wrangle his ranks together. McConnell can't control his own conference. So we are headed towards a very messy December deadline right here.
It seems like McConnell wasn't going to highlight divisions at the expense of something that would be so bad for the country, and no way would it have been good for Republicans.
No, and I think there was a recognition among Republicans, and McConnell especially, at the end of the day, no one wanted the government to default on its debts. And the other concern that was really driving McConnell here was concerns about the filibuster. There were some serious conversations inside the Democratic caucus about changing the Senate rules to get around the filibuster in order to address the debt ceiling. And so Mitch McConnell told lawmakers that he really wanted to relieve some of that pressure on Joe Manchin and Kyrsten Sinema. Let's not tempt fate and test the resolve. And that was the reason why he reversed course, at least temporarily this week.
Because maybe they would use it for something else, like perhaps a giant spending bill.
Voting rights.
Or voting rights or anything. So you have moderates and progressives in the Democratic caucus who we're still trying to figure out what to do on these major spending bills. And Senator Manchin, this idea of Senator Manchin and Senator Sanders getting together in a room is something that the president addressed in pretty colorful fashion.
That's right. He said, quote, it would be homicide. This is some great reporting from Raju. It was obviously meant to be a joke. People laughed. But like most good jokes, there was some truth to it. I mean, Joe Manchin and Bernie Sanders have been openly sniping at each other. They're still very far apart on a lot of these key policy details. And the thinking among Democrats right now is they could be the key to unlocking all of this, or the key to it all falling apart. Bernie Sanders represents the progressive wing. He has a lot of sway. He was able to get them to come along on that initial $3.5 trillion price tag, even though progressives wanted the $6 trillion. So if he can come to agreement with Joe Manchin, who of course is a critical swing vote in the Senate, in the 50-50 Senate, they think they could come together on this. But so far, everyone seems to be talking past each other and not with each other.
I don't know. I'd like to see them in a room together.
It would be interesting.
I really would. All right, Melanie, thank you so much.
They call that a party. A midnight deadline has passed with 4 Trump administration alums defying subpoenas from the January 6th committee investigating the insurrection. The former President Trump has instructed them not to cooperate. He's told them, don't help. He's indicated he will try to assert executive privilege to prevent investigators from gathering evidence on the insurrection. So let's bring in CNN's Whitney Wild and Jessica Dean. Whitney, give us the latest on what's not happening.
Well, it's a holding pattern at the moment. And so there's this question about what is the committee going to do as they try to move forward and figure out how they're going to try to hold these people accountable and prove that the subpoena has teeth. But as you point out, the former president has indicated that he's going to try to exert executive privilege. And the reason we say try is because there's a question about how elastic executive privilege is as it extends past a presidency. So the current thinking is that it's really current President Joe Biden who has the authority to say, yes, this is executive privilege, or no, it's not. However, the former president is indicating he's going to at least try. And we know that he had tried this in the past. He had indicated that he may try to exert executive privilege over the Department of Justice officials who were testifying in a list of other committees, although in the end he didn't intervene. So that is the reigning theory right now. We've been trying to nail down his legal strategy, and at this point, that seems to be the legal strategy. Here's the exact quote from the statement we got yesterday. Executive privilege will be defended not just on behalf of President Trump and his administration, but also on behalf of the office of the President of the United States and the future of our nation. At this point, we have no indication that anybody is actually going to comply with this subpoena. However, I think it's important to point out that the October 7th deadline was a document deadline. This will become a much bigger deal once people start blowing off depositions. And then there's this big question about what papers are actually available to pass along to the committee. So all of these questions remain to be seen.
So many questions, so much information to get together here. And Jessica, you have Republicans responding to this damning Senate report that outlines Trump's effort to overturn the election by trying to rewrite history. Tell us what they're saying.
Right. So I talked to a number of Senate Republicans who sit on the Judiciary Committee yesterday, just checking in with them to see if they had read this report. And just as a refresher to all of you out there, this was an 8-month sweeping report released by Democrats on that committee that outlined a number, it's very long, hundreds of pages long, but some top lines that Trump had asked the DOJ